Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very, very special Voice of College Football show tonight, Game of Thrones, inside the Pac-12 drama. We're going to talk about all of the goings-on of the Pac-12 today and over the last couple of days, and how that things have changed since we unveiled our projection last week that the Pac-12 will be adding San Diego State and Southern Methodist imminently. That has not changed. And in fact, we believe it more strongly today. So Mark Rogers, our official voice of college football, is having a little bit of a technical difficulty and will probably be joining us in just a little bit. In the meantime, I'm Tony Altimore, one of the co-hosts of the Pac-12 Chat Show Live and the USC post-game shows. And I'm here with Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire and Rick, LBC Trojan. Guys, welcome to our little excitement tonight.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
Good to see you, Tony. Thank you.
Thanks for joining. So, guys, we've had some some adventures in the Pac-12 today. Real quick, why don't we just take it 1 sec and tell us kind of what you guys think of the goings-on today, and then let's dive into some details.
Rick, go ahead.
What are your any quick thoughts?
Well, Tony, I just think that I'm sure we're going to share the latest tweet from the Pac-12, the official statement that we're moving forward on.
We are. That's on our next slide.
Yes. So starting last Wednesday, you put all the pieces back together with Kliavkoff showing up at the SMU game. All of the negotiations for different conferences, as you can see, with what happened with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, the 12-team playoff, everything is kind of like secret when it needs to be. The fact that George Kliavkoff was out there publicly, he knew people were going to recognize him, basically goes to show that there was some confidence that was happening out there with the Pac-12. And I think he basically showed ASU, hey, this is what's happening. You can deal with it. And then as you'll disclose what's happened in the last 5 days, we're seeing the power of the Pac-12 and Cal basically reorganizing the Pac-12 moving forward. So very interesting.
And what I have to say is that, Michael Crow being several steps behind everything and everyone, like that's just the most Captain Obvious thing ever, right? And so like that just the thing that totally checks out. But I mean, it's interesting that, when it was confirmed last week that Texas and Oklahoma would be going to the SEC in 2024, not 2025. I mean, the obvious question did pop up. Okay, is Brett Yormark going to poach the Arizona schools? And so like that moved me to, okay, what's happening in Tempe? What's happening in Tucson? And today's events really provide some clarity on that front. So like just in terms of what people looking in here at the Voice of College Football, what's like this piece of news that Tony's been on top of, it really gets to that question of, is the Big 12 going to poach the Arizona schools? Short answer, not going to happen.
Absolutely. Now let's dive in. Just as a refresher to those of you guys, and of course there's a car alarm going off outside. Wonderful. Apologies.
It's a very Pac-12 thing.
Just to you. Yeah. Hey, I went to USC. This is very normal. What on earth is going on out there? Clint, glad to have you. It would be really nice if my neighbors could turn that off. There we go. All right. Just to remind you guys, last year, what Rick was this for those of you guys who haven't been following us, about 3 days after USC and UCLA left, we published recommendations from our team that said that the first thing the Pac-12 should do would be to add San Diego State and Southern Methodist. We then thought that Rice, Air Force, and Fresno State could be potentially further options, but we said the first two, the absolute musts for the Pac-12, were San Diego State and SMU. Which was kind of what we thought at the time. But another thing that we thought was that Cal was missing its role. So we're going to talk in just a minute about a little bit more of the history of the Pac-12 and why this matters. But Cal is the baller. Like, for example, and when I say Cal, I don't just mean like the hapless basketball team. I mean the University of California, the 12 campus system. That is probably the single. I hate them. Okay, like I do not cheer for them. I love when they lose. It gives me glee. But it is probably the single most important public education institution in like the history of man, to be totally honest. I mean, they literally have 10 elements on the periodic table to come from them, 2 of which they've named after themselves. And yeah, Berkelium in California, you can look it up. And we said, when we look back in history, we said, amidst the Pacific Coast Conference's 1957 crisis, it was Cal's first 2 chancellors who created the Pac-12. And then in its greatest crisis since its launch, we needed Cal to seize the day and grab a mantle of leadership. We are understanding that is happening now, along with Washington and Stanford. Washington is the chair of the Pac-12. And we're going to get into kind of why that sort of fits from history. So for those of you guys who have been following our channel, we projected, about a week and a half ago, guys? I forget exactly now. At this point, it blurs together. That the Pac-12 would add San Diego State and SMU. Again, this is a projection, kind of like an election. Like we believe this will happen. We're not going to lie to you and tell you that we have wiretaps on Pac-12 headquarters. But we believe, we firmly believe to the point that we can project from our Pac-12 chat show team that San Diego State and SMU will be added to the Pac-12. Then we had today a really, really big thing that some people I think are making fun of, but I think was kind of misinterpreted. And that was this, the joint statement from the 10 Pac-12 conference board members. Now, a lot of people don't understand what this is. So let's just take a minute to say what this is. This is a joint statement released by the 10 Pac-12 presidents. So, wrong screen. So we're going to get into in just a minute some of the significance, I think, of what exactly this is. But this statement right here, it is from the 10 presidents, and they say, the 10 Pac-12 universities look forward to consummating successful media rights deals in the very near future. Based on positive conversations with multiple media rights partners over the past few weeks, we remain highly confident in our future growth and success as a conference and united in our commitment to one another. What that is, guys, and tell me if I'm losing it here, that is a big middle finger to all these 12 and on doofus who think that anyone will leave the Pac-12. This is a direct statement from the chancellors and presidents of the Pac-12 that says we are united, moving forward, good to go, step off. What are your thoughts?
I think that can be interpreted that way. I also look at it that Klyavkov has got along with Cal, who is pretty much the bully in the room, has got everybody on board, including ASU, as you had mentioned. Michael Crow is eating crow right now for all the missteps that he has taken with the Pac-12. He has been exposed. This is a message to all the boosters, all the crazy fans that have been putting on YouTube videos with all their proposed scenarios. This is squelching all of that. And it's saying to the ASUs and to any of those schools that think about leaving, no, we are united, we are on board, and we're going to move forward and get the grant of rights hammered out. And we're sticking together as the Pac-10 now, and what it's going to be as it will be announced how many of our teams will be joining.
Yeah, the simple news element of this is that you have all 10 schools making a statement, right? Because you don't make this statement if you don't have all 10 schools aligned. Now, it's not as though the Pac-12 is acting from a position of strength. It's not. John Wilner's been reporting on about how, the market has not been hot, has not been robust for a media rights package, and Klyavkov is still trying to scramble. And of course, you want to get your schools lined up before you then go to Amazon for a digital rights deal. You want to have everything in order, before you then ask for a certain amount of money. And of course, you have that Comcast overpayment scandal that still has to be worked out. So like there's a lot of dysfunction here, and Kliavkoff has to work behind the scenes to get all of that in order. So like this does not reflect a good situation for the Pac-12, but it does mean no renegades. Like everyone's been brought in line, everyone's been brought to heel, and there's going to be no escaping. There's going to be no backdoor escape hatch. And the specific component that Tony has unpacked very helpfully is that Arizona State was really maybe not wanting to go, but wanting to at least have the freedom to go. And no, ASU does not have that freedom.
And to answer D-Rock Irish, awesome friend of the show, D-Rock, good to see you as always, asks, do these 10 schools have any other choices but to concur? Well, the choice of whether or not to concur in the statement, absolutely. This is from the presidents. They don't sign off. This is not like they were ordered. In fact, we'll get to ASU and their lack of choices in a minute. If someone was not committed, they would not have released this. All right, this because the other thing is I think we think in social media terms, right? And like in social media world, not academia, but in social media world, what should really happen is every one of the presidents should do something like quote tweet something from our wonderful friend of the show, John Kurtz, and be like, ew, your team is smelly. And then like make that point that way. That's not how presidents of universities work. They don't work in Twitter sass. Like these are multi-billion-dollar corporate CEOs. Washington is running on a $9.2 billion budget. I will tell you that I think that this whole media rights debate is probably, guys, am I right? Probably the most time that Anna Marie Cauchi has ever dealt with 0.0085% of her budget. Do you think she's ever spent this much time on 0.00875 or whatever percent of her budget? I doubt it. No. So this is big. Now, one of the things is what it does mean to me, guys, and tell me if you guys think I'm wrong. We'll get to this in a sec. It means that they are probably going to move ahead with expansion before they move ahead with media rights. Media rights aren't going to come this week.
As I mentioned earlier, you have to get that piece in order. Like you have to be asking Amazon and ESPN, any other partner, okay, what are you going to pay for San Diego State, SMU, or any other school? Like, what kind of package you're offering. You have to have the schools lined up first. And that's really one curious aspect of John Woolner's analysis. Not that like he doesn't see the big picture, he does, but just that he was saying, okay, get a media rights deal done sooner rather than later. Not necessarily wrong, but just that he wasn't quite emphasizing, well, you have to get your 12 membership format lined up before the media rights deal. So like Wilner should have been emphasizing, okay, you got to get your schools on board, then you do the media rights. That's exactly right.
And I want to clear up a quick confusion. We're going to talk a little bit about recruiting here, guys. But here's the thing. We're talking CEO level here. We don't talk about recruiting of football players, right? We're talking about recruiting of students on our level. Because when you guys think and you get in your mode and you go, what's good for recruiting? What does On3 say? Like, that's not how these people think. That's like asking about like which piece of like celery, parsley garnish is the steakhouse going to put on the mashed potato side dish. Like maybe not even that significant on a CEO level. So when we talk about recruiting, we're going to talk a little bit about recruiting. We're going to talk about recruiting of students, because I'll tell you what, Arizona State tremendously relies on the state of California for students, as does Arizona. I mean, yeah, football players are really nice too, but CEO level, they are much more concerned about students than they are about actual football players. I like it. Gumby points out, conference talk to C-SPAN about a media rights deal. Hey, that has a lot better distribution than the Pac-12 network.
So Tony, what you're saying is university leadership, when they talk about recruiting, they're talking about total applicants and talking about acceptance rates. And where are those students coming from? Share with me demographics and place of origin.
That is the state of California. And in many cases, the Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area.
Right.
So let's just really quick we talked about this statement. So this statement was jointly released by these 10 people on the screen. These 10 people are the Pac-12 presidents and chancellors. One catch is, you guys who watch our show know we've talked with Wazoo Chancellor Elizabeth Chilton. She represents Wazoo as Wazoo, but her former boss, Kirk Schultz, who's the system president, currently sits on the Pac-12 Executive Committee. So the Pac-12 Executive Committee, who sets all the policy and is running stuff, is those three in the middle. And the way this works, it's on the seniority scale. So it's like the chairman, it kind of keeps adding and shifting over in seniority based on who's next. So, when Dr. Cauchi's next, Kirk Schultz or Mark Tessier-Levine will take over, and Carol Chris will come on to the three-person committee, and Dr. Cauchi will rotate off. Kind of how they do that rotation. So the thing is you guys take a look at when they joined, there's something really interesting here, and that is that we have one very, very senior leader in the Pac-12, and that is Arizona State President Michael Crow. Now, he is a legend in education. He's actually went to Iowa State for undergrad, interestingly. But he is a legend in education because he has catapulted Arizona State into just another stratosphere academically of where they used to be. He's also kind of a very, very senior figure in the Pac-12, but he was very much a deep supporter of past Commissioner Larry Scott. So we're going to get to that in just kind of a minute as to where that got us. But we want you guys to really see, like, these are the people making the catches. Now, what do you guys know about Oregon right now?
Well, Michael Schill went to Northwestern.
Oregon does not have a CEO right now. Oregon is right now working with an interim president. He's their provost. He's actually awesome. He's their provost. He's like I think he's a famous biologist. He ran their Knight Center for Research. Really great guy. He's not the president. So he is the interim president, sort of filling in for Oregon. So when we look at people here with gravitas, who has really, really, really the gravitas? This is something that actually sort of matters. In an old world, it was very much USC and had a lot of power. But going back in the history of the conference, this is an interesting conference. So let me tell you guys just really quick, because it really relates to where we are today, how the conference was actually founded. So the Pac-12 was founded as the AAWU. It's called the Big Five. And they were having a lot of problems coming to an agreement. And on June 22nd, 1959, the four presidents, because there's one president of the University of California, today it's Michael Drake, but at the time was Clark Kerr, most famous guy in higher education history. The four presidents got together at the San Francisco airport, and they decided they were going to invent a new kind of conference, which is today's Pac-12. And this conference was going to be controlled exclusively 100% under the authority of these four presidents. That was big. Guys, with questions, we're going to get to those in just a little bit. Thank you, John. We'll star this, and we'll come back in a little bit. We're not really going to talk as much about like Colorado State and Utah State and all that. Thank you for your contribution. We'll chat a little bit about San Diego State and SMU and where we're going from there in just a little bit. These four presidents had complete control of the conference, and that was a big deal because the old Pacific Coast Conference was controlled by faculty athletic representatives. The Big Ten really kind of still is. So it was a big difference to say the CEOs are in charge, and it was just the four of them. A couple years later, they added Washington State. There were a lot of drama in the 50s. They exiled the northern schools. And then there was a huge controversy where after begging and begging and begging, and the California schools did not want it, but they relented and they agreed to allow Oregon and Oregon State back into the conference. This is our sort of cartoon of the readmission of Oregon and Oregon State in 1964. And this was sort of a big deal because Oregon, Oregon State, and Washington State kind of knew to keep their mouths shut. Again, this is a conference founded and run by the presidents of California, USC, Stanford, and Washington. Everybody else was just details. So that kind of went along until 1976. And in 1976, this is where it gets really wild. USC and UCLA decided it was time to add some more people. And really nobody else wanted it. But USC and UCLA laid down the law. And there was a really, really, really nasty meeting, the vote meeting, where they brought Arizona and Arizona State up for a vote. And Washington and Stanford said no. They said, we do not think that these two institutions are quality enough for our conference. We don't want them in. No. And USC stood up and they said, first of all, and there were a lot of F-bombs, I understand, thrown in this, but they said, do not speak to us about quality of academics while you sit next to Oregon State and Washington State. And yeah, I mean, it got ugly. And they said, and President of USC said, I'm going to give you 15 minutes. And then I'm going to go tell the media either we're adding Arizona and Arizona State or USC and UCLA just quit. And they freaked out, and Washington and Stanford were humiliated and enraged. And the headline of the LA Times, you see it right here, expansion of Pac-8, USC power play. So just to be clear, the two people who wanted the two Arizona schools in the conference were USC and UCLA. They're gone now. So again, Arizona school. Now the Arizona schools, John Paul Schaefer, who you see here, legendary president of the University of Arizona. Amazing, amazing, amazing higher education leader. This guy, at the time, the Arizona schools were like the New Mexico schools, right? Like they were just not really relevant. Arizona State had a really good football team, but the schools weren't really relevant. Arizona had just added a med school, and they believed that they were going to hitch their wagon to the future of the state, the future of the school being with the state of California. They thought this was a really big deal. And Arizona State really wasn't too into it. And Arizona said, too bad, because there's one board of regents for the state of Arizona who controls all three schools, including Arizona and Arizona State. So they got dragged in and absolutely has been everything for them. So one of the things I don't know if you guys saw last week, the athletic director of Arizona, or a week and a half ago now, maybe 2 weeks, came out with a whole podcast talking about how important the Pac-12 is to Arizona and how committed Arizona is to the Pac-12. Now, there's some like idiots in the Arizona circles that think that Arizona has some interest in the Big 12. That is false.
Jason Scheer, cough. Jason Scheer, cough.
I'm not saying any names. That is a false statement. The senior leadership of Arizona, from the time of John Paul Schaefer, who you see right on that screen, till today, knows that their wagon is hitched to the state of California and that nothing has been more important to their university than being a part of this conference for the academic boost and the growth of the school itself. And we're going to get into some more details in all this. So today, again, we're back. These are our 10 people in charge, including Michael Crow. Now, Michael Crow, he was the champion of Larry Scott. Larry Scott was the worst thing that ever happened to the Pac-12. Larry Scott literally arguably destroyed the amazingness of the Pac-12 and drove USC and UCLA to finally say, we've had enough of this, we're out. In 2000, before Larry Scott got there, USC made more money from the Pac-12 than Alabama made from the SEC.
Fact.
Just to give you context. After Larry Scott, that was all destroyed and just absolutely devastated. And so if you look at the dates, Larry Scott came in 2010, I think. 2009?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, didn't Mr. Crow double down?
Sorry, obviously.
Didn't Mr. Crow double down on Larry Scott and give him a contract extension in 2017?
How about this from 2019? You see this article, this headline here from 2019?
Yes.
ASU President Michael Crow defends Pac-12, remains in support of Commissioner Larry Scott.
Yeah, so.
And of course, the Pac-12 had a chance to redo its media rights in circa 2018 and didn't do it. Like, that was the time to go into bed with ESPN, hand over the keys to ESPN, give ESPN control instead of sticking with the Pac-12 network model. That was 2018, and that was the time to, adjust, and didn't do it. And that might have sealed the Pac-12's fate, at least relative to USC and UCLA.
So this, just for our viewers out there, thank you for joining us. Tony is like the expert on, as you can tell, on the Pac-12 university leadership from the early 50s till today. And he's detailing that because, like Tony said, this is a Game of Thrones. And now you're going to get to see who's getting their head chopped off, who deserves to get their head chopped off, and who deserves to jump in the dumpster fire and who's going to light the match. So Tony, spectacular. For those people who are like, what is going on out there? Again, it's from a university top level perspective, and everybody else is going to fall in line. And that's how it goes. So for those fans out there, they're like the plebeians. They don't mean anything, but they can get on Twitter and think they can, influence things, and they spread rumors. It's all false. This is
in fact, if you want to spread a rumor that really worries a Pac-12 president, spread a rumor that Medicaid is going to like change its coverage rates. That will scare the bejesus out of them. As for anything, MH Dwyer or whatever wants to like that does not scare them. But Medicare coverage rates or like student loan like allowance rates, that scares the living snot out of these people. So once again, when we take a look at this here, Colorado came into the conference with Larry Scott. I think they started in 2011, 2012. They joined the conference. Michael Crow is the last one, and he sort of views himself as the elder statesman of the conference. But it turns out maybe not. So let's talk a little bit about Arizona State here as we get ready for some drama. Arizona State has hitched its wagon to the Pac-12. So as you see here, here's an article from Arizona State where they talk about their California student rates are up 83% when they wrote this article. They are up to, they say, $760 million of research a year. They are up to $331 million in annual giving. Like they are just absolutely rolling. And that money and those kids, because again, what's important? Is it football recruiting? No, that's the garnish on the side dish of mashed potatoes. What's important is student recruiting, and student recruiting is tied to California.
And so, let's briefly mention that, hey, I live in Arizona, I live in Phoenix, and there's so many Californians flowing to Arizona in terms of the taxes, tax base, tax rates. You're seeing Arizona become more purple, more blue, politically. That's a migration from California. So that the educational administrative leaders at the Arizona schools, they're recognizing that influx of California families, households, and all the income and the opportunities that go with that. So that's like a demographic part of this whole larger story that Tony's unpacking.
Huge issue. And I thought another piece of story is, what do you guys think is the most important thing to Arizona State athletics? The number one thing that they trumpet as their greatest achievement last year. Anybody want to take a guess? Was it their national championship, you think?
What did this athletic department do?
The number one achievement from Arizona State athletics. This is from their annual report. The number one thing. Look what they highlighted.
Grades.
Sun Devil Athletics ranks first in Pac-12 with an all-time best academic progress rate, beating Stanford. And then the second most important thing is that Sun Devil Athletics, SDA is Sun Devil Athletics, has matched their all-time high of 92% graduation success rate, which is, by the way, both of these are awesome. We're not belittling they're awesome. But third is only won a national championship. So we're talking Arizona State. What is most important to them? The state of California, and the number one thing they did was they beat Stanford academically. So
their athletes beat Stanford academically.
Their athletes beat Stanford. Okay, thank you.
Really quick. Zing. Let's be careful.
Men's basketball beat Stanford too.
Yeah. They did.
That's about it.
that is about it. Who won in football? I don't remember who did it.
Stanford won.
That's right. Stanford
Jones late. Yeah.
I forgot about that. That was embarrassing for them. So there's been lots of leaks now from Arizona State, guys. Lots of leaks. Arizona State is unhappy with the Pac. Arizona State is all of this stuff is all about how Arizona State is unhappy with the Pac. But I think you can kind of see, yeah, Arizona State's kind of married to the Pac. Now, I wondered when I first saw all this stuff, I wondered, is there like a negotiations game here? I actually wondered, you guys saw I put on my tinfoil hat, and I said, I wonder if Arizona State's going to try to get into the AAU. Well, it turns out we've now heard, and we're going to go into one guy, Greg Flugar, who's got some great information on this, but it really turns out the closest thing Arizona State's going to get from the AAU is a swirly in the AAU bathroom, because the rest of the Pac-12 presidents have decided that he is responsible for Larry Scott. Yeah. And a lot of them are really, really, really upset about it. So let's get, what else, what have you guys heard? What do you guys hear in the rumor mill before we get into what we found out?
I would just quickly point out that Comcast overpayment scandal, it brought Larry Scott back to the forefront. So like a big political thorn reminder that just brought to everyone's attention again that, oh, Michael Crow, you stuck by this bozo all this time. F you. F you.
And you didn't just stick by that bozo. You owned it.
Yeah, that's right. He doubled down, tripled down, you could say.
I was also reading the tea leaves last Thursday. If you remember, Kleofkoff was seen at the game Wednesday night, the SMU game Wednesday night in Dallas, Fort Worth area. On Thursday, about, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m., I think Eastern, the press release was dropped by the SEC and Greg Sankey that OU and Texas would be beginning in the SEC in 2024. I believe that press. And then on Friday, Greg Sankey had his two SEC mouthpieces. He was on the Cole Kublik and McElroy show, basically stating that, their conference, they have this cozy geography in the Southeast. And their longest road trip would be shorter than USC and UCLA's. Their longest road trip in the SEC would be shorter than USC and UCLA's shortest trip to Lincoln, Nebraska. He actually threw out 2,000 miles, and it would be another 2,000 miles to get to Rutgers. Well, his math was wrong, and I think he was
way wrong.
He was. The article talked about him throwing shade at the Big Ten, but I think it also threw shade in a secondary position to the Pac-12, because this comes a day after Kleofkoff's in Dallas. And so everybody knows, or it's highly speculated, I have no inside information, that the Pac-12 is going to bring aboard San Diego State and SMU. So that would be basically the Pac-12 extending into Texas. So I think that was well calculated, because, that deal was negotiated. They were just waiting for a particular time to drop the press release. And if you don't think so, sorry. Greg Sankey is very calculated in everything he does. The guy's a G.
Well, back to Michael Crow really quickly. I just want to read this. I didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of research for us, but here's my favorite quote from Michael Crow. This is in 2019, like you guys were talking about. To some extent, I don't really understand this. He's talking about the criticism of the Pac-12. To some extent, I don't really understand it. What I mean by that is I came here to do a job 16 years ago. The conference had very little income. The conference was not highly capable of doing all the things we're now capable of doing. And then he went on to talk about how they went in a different direction. And he was proud to be one of the 3 remaining ADs that thought about this great idea to have the Pac-12 network. Anybody is going to do that and stick their neck out like that is going to open themselves up to criticism. And the fact that he doubled and tripled down on it is probably the biggest damning thing for Arizona State at this point. So they don't have much of a leg to stand on when they're talking about the other teams in the conference.
Well, and the point
not at all.
The point to piggyback on, Tim, is that, in 2013, Larry Scott was actually doing a good job, or at least it was perceived that he was doing a good job, because Pac-12 Network was new, and there was more money coming into the conference, like you saw, like Mike Leach and other, Rich Rodriguez. Like, it was attracting quality football coaches. The budgets were bigger. They were able to make better hires. Chris Peterson at Washington, in the early half of the 2010s, you were seeing the increase in revenue translating into better hires at football administrations throughout the conference. And, the Pac-12 Network gamble on, the completely internal ownership, not sharing it with ESPN, all right, give it a whirl. And we're keeping 100% of the pie. We're not giving ESPN any money. But of course, that was all predicated on getting in the door with DirecTV, eventually figuring that thing out. And they never did. But like in 2013, like the things that Larry Scott was doing made sense. We're producing results. And the thing about Michael Crow is that, and as I mentioned, I did allude to this earlier on this show here at the Voice of College Football, in 2018, after several years, there was no movement with DirecTV. Like that was dead. Nothing was going to happen. Like the Pac-12 planted its flag on, insisting on a deal that DirecTV would never accept. So that was a failure. And Larry Scott needed to realize, okay, we tried it. And for several years, it actually brought us some results. Like the Pac-12 was making the playoff. It made it in 2014 with Oregon, made it in 2016 with Washington. But, the air went out of that balloon. We failed. 2018, it was time to give control of the Pac-12 network, Pac-12 inventory to ESPN to make sure that the most powerful force in college sports television was going to be aligned with the Pac-12 so that the money was going to flow in. So like there was a time when it would made sense to ride with Larry Scott, see if his vision, see if his plan was going to work for the conference. It was worth trying. Like that was an aspirational thing. That's what any conference commissioner and any Pac-12 CEO group should have done. But in 2018, it was time to punt. It was time to give the ball to ESPN. And that's when Michael Crow just revealed that he was not able to adjust with the times. And so this story today is really confirmation that the new generation, the new layers of leadership in the Pac-12, which the board, the CEO group has turned over. They're saying, hey, Michael Crow, you're out of touch. You're behind the times. You sit in your seat.
So let's get to what we found, a little more details. So we get more of these rumors and details have been coming out. The Arizona State's unhappy. Greg Flukauer, who's phenomenal guy, has a really, really great YouTube channel. Peek Around the Corner, does a regular host. We're just going to quick put out some highlights that he had from a leaked letter from Arizona State. Again, lots of leaks from Arizona State, but I think that Greg's has some of the most interesting tidbits. Rather than we've hit on a lot of them that you got from other places, but I just want to give a huge shout out to Greg. If you guys aren't following me, you should follow his channel. But he had a couple of interesting tidbits from an Arizona State booster leaked email, and one of them was that Arizona State is really angry at the rest of the pack, particularly at the University of California, because it turns out, as we now know, and you guys who followed this mess know, that Cal tried to broker a deal with the Big Ten to get Cal, Stanford, Oregon, and Washington into the Big Ten. And that enraged Arizona State, who felt that Cal was really sort of backstabbing them to leave the Pac-12 with 6 members and dead. And that did not sit well with Arizona State. Cal's answer to that basically is, yeah, we did. And so would you. And I think it's pretty obvious to everybody. Let's just say this right now. If any school gets a Big Ten invite, they're going to go. We don't have to debate that. You don't have to type it in the chat because we know it. It's yes. Same with that SEC, 100%. However, the Big Ten and the SEC are not adding anyone else over the short or medium term. Anyone dispute that or any thoughts on that? Can we just put that to bed?
I think the Big Ten made that very clear, right? When Washington and Oregon tried to make their run. And then I think you said, Tony, that also, Cal had reached out to them. Is that correct?
Yeah, so this whole UC Regions thing dragging on for months and months. One of the goals of that was one of the goals in that was that they would try to that they'd be like, oh, sure, we'll just add you.
Wasn't Cal? I think part of that delay wasn't Cal still trying to get into the Big Ten by saying UCLA, you can't go, and this dog and pony show that was happening. Do you think there was backroom dealing, Tony, of Cal still trying to get their way into the Big Ten, like a Hail Mary?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Probably not the best strategy to threaten the girl you're courting, but yeah.
By the way, I've just seen Twitter has now added San Diego State and SMU's logos to that statement. So kudos to Twitter Photoshop. Brett Yormark's Hot Mic is the Twitter account that has done that. I love that. It's absolutely amazing. Or no, John Grove did. There's going to be some interesting comments in here. Oh, there's a whole parody of it. I can't wait to see. All right, we'll get to that later. Let's first keep going on this.
Well, Tony,
So, yeah,
I got here a little bit late. Sorry. Did you guys already cover what Wilner said about 2030 and the fact that he doesn't see, or was that Canzano? I can't remember which one it was, but one of them basically said that he doesn't see, after this media deal with the Pac-12, that he doesn't see a future for the Pac-12. Did you hear anything about that?
I mean, people have been saying that continuously. I mean, one of the questions for that though is, and we can get into that. This is not really. Let's talk about that in a little bit. Let's come back to that, because one of the questions is people. There are people who believe that the Big Ten is going to get to 327 members. And there are people who think that the Big Ten is probably going to stay at 16 or maybe 18. And that, some of those might not be Oregon, Cal, Washington, blah, blah, it might be Florida State. So there's a lot of debates. We'll get to that in just a minute. But anyway, so as Greg pointed out from this booster who was quite angry, they felt very betrayed. They also are quite angry because the Pac-12 schools are blaming them. They are blaming Michael Crow for causing the problems and essentially telling him your assistance is not necessary. And what I thought was really interesting is they're mad because apparently they say that, and I thought this was really funny because they're saying, well, they're telling us, apparently the guy said something like, they're telling us we're the redheaded stepchild and believing that Cal and Stanford will value SMU more academically than ASU. And that is, yeah. True. They're higher ranked. Yeah,
100%.
a lot of this is sort of yes. Fact. So we'll keep going. Anyway, so a couple other things that they've said, which I thought really interesting. They claimed ASU would vote no. I don't think they really would, but even if they did, I think there'd be enough overwhelming votes on that it wouldn't matter. And just really pointing out that ASU is really, they think, angry because they sort of felt left out, and now they feel like they're being treated like the redheaded stepchild. But I mean, two people wanted them in the conference, and where are those two people now?
They're patrons of left.
On the way.
They're patrons of left. So I think there's not a lot of patience. The other thing that I thought was most interesting, and this is the huge takeaway, is that these boosters have acknowledged that Arizona State is tied to Arizona, and Arizona has clearly made it 100% crystal clear that as long as Cal and Stanford are in the conference, Arizona's going nowhere, and Arizona State is going nowhere. And just, I mean, hands down. And Greg pointed out on his channel, but we've heard this, guys. We've heard it. You guys know we heard it from people. We don't like to get into our sources versus your sources, but we heard it from really high up people in Arizona last fall that they had looked at going to the Big 12. That idea was done, that Arizona was married to the state of California. And I think we sort of showed you a lot of details on why, but it is apparently very, very, very conclusive now. And Greg had this leaked letter that's just fantastic that pointed out Arizona and Arizona State are going nowhere. So where they are going is apparently to a deal that will probably have something to do with Amazon, as we saw, probably not immediately. And we believe that they will be expanding to include SDSU and SMU. So we can get into more. You guys have seen some of this on some other shows we've done. We can get into some more details. But guys, as we just kind of reflecting back here, we now know that of the Pac-12, we think here, I kind of look, and there were folks in the Big 12 that thought that they were going to be able to get 6 members. And I think you guys have seen this slide before. I can't count to 1. I don't know if any of you can count to 6. But where would the defections be coming from?
Well, I think the important point to raise here is that, the big Yormark was able to get about 32 million per school. And the current estimates have, the Pac-12 probably eventually landing around 25 million, 26 million. And, the
There's
Big
still some
12,
people who think it's closer to 32
yeah,
or 35,
but let's
somewhere in that
say,
range.
let's say for the sake of argument and for the sake of conversation that it is 25, that it's not closer to 30. But let's say it is 25. $7 million per school, like that is chump change. And you compare to all the administrative, legal, medical, academic dimensions of all this, 7 million, like that's nothing. This was what you were mentioning earlier, Tony, with Washington and
Whose phone is that?
infinitesimally small. If you're talking about 30 million per school.
Tony, did you mute all of us?
One sec. Guys, is that my computer? What's going on?
I'm not hearing anything on my end.
Sorry, I'm having a weird computer tech issue. Okay,
I'm good.
that was weird.
Yeah, so just basically reiterating, if my audio got cut in midway, just if it's 30 million per school, okay, then you're talking some serious coin and something that would get a school to think about leaving, changing. But $6-7 million, assuming the Pac-12 gets a $25-26 million deal, that's not going to get anyone to change. And that's something where Wilner, anyone who's been following this larger drama, has been very consistent. Schools are not going to be bolting, we got to go to the Big 12 over 6 million difference per year. That's absurd and always has been.
Yes, no, it is. Sorry, I'm apparently in a meme now. Too funny. And just to take a look at those numbers, let's just glance at them really quick. Oh, wrong button. Sorry. Looking at the numbers really quick. Okay, now we're having a screen issue. Sorry, guys. Here were the numbers on the Big 12, and there's a belief in the Big 12 that if they can just convince some Pac-12 schools to come, that ESPN will reopen their negotiations for their TV deal. I'll tell you that has not worked for the ACC. I've been told, that there's a belief among some of the Big 12 members that, okay, well, if we get enough of them, then we can just add a whole new time zone and slot. Maybe. Again, I can't. They would need at least 4. I can't count to 1. Let's give them 1. I can't count to 4.
I think the key thing to look at too, when this new Pac-12 grant rights media deal is finalized, and we get to see a breakdown between linear, ESPN, and whoever it is, if it's Amazon, if it's Apple, but what's going to be streaming, what the percentage is. That's what's key, because the Big 12 doesn't have that distribution right now. They have your basic cable linear distribution. They're going to be subject. They're already a secondary player when it comes to conferences behind the Big 10, the SEC, just like the ACC is and the Pac-12 is. Let's see what the Pac-12 is going to do, because streaming is the future. Everybody's cutting the cord. The NFL has a deal with Amazon, and they are experimenting with the technology. And if the NFL is investing in that streaming capability, that technology distribution, well, they're going to make it work. And so the younger generation is into streaming, and that's where you're going to get a younger demographic, which everybody desires, and you create your own viewing windows with streaming. So the thing is yes, the dollars might be lower, as Matt had pointed out, but what are you creating for your future distribution? Because when it comes time for the Big 12 and the ACC, oh my God, the ACC's hostage till 2036. Guess what? You're going to be watching the ACC at 1:00 in the morning, or you're going to be watching, Cincinnati versus Iowa State kicking off at 11 o'clock Central Time, because that's what you're gonna get with you. You're not going to have any type of viewing windows when it comes to those conferences, or you have less desirable.
And the money might not be the big thing. And I do agree with you, Rick. I think it is the future, but it's not the now. And you have a huge generation of people, big money people, 50s, 60s, 70 years old that I mean, aren't cutting the cord, and they're not gonna be able to find Amazon. They're lucky they could order a clock on Amazon, let alone find a football game. But what I'm worried about is right now, the big problem with the Pac-12 deal was the fact that nobody saw Pac-12 games, whether with the time slot, whatever. My biggest thing about USC going to the Big Ten is not the fact to be on Fox, but I'm hoping we're on Fox at noon, Fox at 3 in the afternoon, not Amazon at 10 o'clock on the East Coast. No one's there's an issue with the fact they're not going to get the exposure. Which we all know leads to recruits, which leads to winning, which leads to why we're doing all of this stuff. So that's just a big concern I'm having for that deal.
Well, Tim, I agree. I'm talking about future deals. So the next time the Big 12 ups with ESPN, I don't know, what is it going to be, 2030, 2031? The technology and distribution is going to be totally different. And in terms of what you're going to be able to negotiate, the windows, your visibility, that's all going to change.
Oh, think back 8 years, Rick. Think about how much just changed, let alone in technology. Believe me, thinking 8 years out from this point is exponential. It's like ridiculous the amount of technology we're going to have in 8 years. So yeah, exactly. I'm with you. I'm saying now. I'm saying what's making this seem a little bit. It'd be nice if they had an anchor with most of their tier 1 rights on a major network, and they supplemented with something else that's streaming. I think that would be the way to go. But it sounds at this point, isn't that an issue? Correct, for their tier 1 stuff they're trying to sell.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be ideal, but at least they're looking forward to trying to increase visibility and trying to attract a younger viewer that is into streaming. I could be completely wrong. It's just my kind of business outlook.
And one point I would just make on this whole streaming point that Rick has, eloquently articulated and unpacked. The younger viewer who is into streaming and doesn't find it a problem and can easily access these various broadcasts and outlets. The younger viewer is not the older, baby boomer Pac-12 football fan who, insists on having the 12:30 p.m. game. Now, of course, like USC, UCLA should have been a 12:30 p.m. game. I'm going to be an oldster in that regard, but like the younger viewer won't mind a night game. Like that part of the demographic is not going to be upset at having to watch a game at night, and that is a time slot that the Pac-12 is going to rely on, because that's something the Pac-12 has that the Big 12 and none of the other conferences do. So like that's probably going to be the play in terms of streaming, that it's going to be night slots. Football.
Can I ask a bad question?
Basketball. Go ahead.
Can I ask a bad question?
Yeah.
So these are fans that have had to find games on the Pac-12 network. Do you think they're not going to be able to find them on Amazon? I just asked that as a devil's advocate. I mean,
I get
USC
you, but
is going to be on CBS and NBC, but
I'll bet you they'll find on ABC and ESPN and Fox a lot easier. I get what you guys are all saying. I fully get it. And I do agree with you. I mean, Rick, I cut the cord years ago. I haven't had cable or any of that stuff in ages, So I do get what you're saying. But if at the end of the day, we're talking about why, beyond everything else, if you want to win, we're talking about just money, dollars, cents, and this and that right now, and realignment. But then when we're talking about actual football, do you guys don't think it's hurt Pac-12 teams to be in those time slots, to be, and like Tony just said, on the Pac-12 network where nobody sees your games? USC's could be on national television all the time. The recruiting can only go up. Think about the recruiting as well. Think of all the negative recruiting you get when they talk about the fact that, did you want you and your family, you want to be seen on television in the age of NIL, you want to be in front of as many television audiences as possible. And
can I just give the counterpoint is that was 100% true when my dad was debating, like, in 1962, whether he should go to, SEC champion Tulane or Notre Dame or Michigan State. Nowadays, this idea like, oh, no one can see you, your family can't see you. Like, there's not a game I can't see.
I mean, ease.
Unless it's on ESPN Plus.
My point is if you being able to, again, look at Caleb debunked that as well. He won the Heisman, but the fact is you can't, if you want NIL money, you want to be a national brand, national name. And if your games are buried at bad time slots on like an Amazon where only a portion of the country is going to be able to see you, I just can't see that that's going to be as beneficial as I believe you guys think it's going to be.
Well, one important point to make about a streaming deal with Amazon or Apple, any of those players, is that like this is not going to be for your high-end games. Like if you, to the extent that USC or I'm talking about the Pac-12, so not USC, but the Pac-12.
I know you gotta get used to it, don't you? It's
hard.
That's right.
That's right. I stepped in it. To the extent that like Oregon or Washington, like the games that are going to be on an Amazon package for football are going to be their cupcake games or their lower end conference games. They're not going to put any of their signature conference games
and actually
on Amazon. Maybe like one, but no more. Like you're generally going to get lower end games on the streaming. You still want your high end games on television. So like that's another part of this, but that's also a reason why you're the reports of the Pac-12 and Kliavkoff not being able to get top dollar. With the struggling to get that market value, like that makes sense because like Amazon's not going to absolutely completely break the bank for, Washington State versus Cal. It's not going to be, that lucrative, but you certainly want that entry point such that the games are available on Amazon as opposed to Pac-12 Network, because Pac-12 Network doesn't have direct TV. It doesn't have whole large swaths of the full American population available. So even if you're not getting top dollar, a move to Amazon from Pac-12 Network, with Pac-12 Network becoming just for the Olympic sports, it's still a net positive for the Pac-12. Even if you're not getting your high-end football games on Amazon, it's still in the end, in the overall cost, cost benefit balance, it's still a plus for the Pac-12.
And friend of the show, Larry Pilgrim, who we love, hey Larry, go Utes, has a great question that I actually kind of love this one. Would SEC be able to find their SEC fans be able to find their games on streaming? Yes, they would.
Take a look at 5 years ago. Okay, how many Amazon vans did you see compared to now? When you're driving through the neighborhood, how many boxes do you see on the porch? People know how to find Amazon. It's not an issue. Okay. There's a reason why brick and mortar retail has been dying. It's because of Amazon. So there's a change in technology, distribution. My God, if you had told people 10 years ago, yeah, you can order your groceries on your phone. Now, technology that people wouldn't get it. Now there's Instacart. There's, Grubhub. There's all this technology. So it's out there and the younger people are utilizing it. So,
and it will be beneficial because they also have the NFL. They've dipped their feet in the NFL with the Amazon, so they'll be able to pump their college games as well. So that is one beneficial thing is they will get some free advertising that way. But I'm going to wait and see on all that.
Well, you go ahead.
Let me ask you guys a question. Let me ask you guys a question here. Getting back to our game. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. I have to feed my pets. I had an hour here, so glad I could be on here for the hour. You want to catch me later tonight at the USC show at 11 Eastern at the Voice of College Football.
11 Eastern. Matt, real quick before you go, one quick question. Do you change your predictions on the
predictions
based on our news today?
It's San Diego State and SMU are coming. I'm pretty clear. I'm pretty firm on that.
Awesome. Go feed your pet, Matt. Thank you for joining us.
See you later tonight, guys.
Right on.
Yep. Thank you.
And or pony up, as the case may be now for the Pac-12. Guys, what are things about? Let's ask you guys here. Getting back to our Game of Thrones questions here, as we look to conquer kingdoms. Do we? I think we were pretty set last time we took a look. We have officially projected San Diego State and SMU. Any doubts or questions creeping in based on our Game of Thrones today?
No, I think those are solid picks for all the reasons you've laid out perfectly in the past, Tony, about their candidacy, for all the positive reasons, academics, also the market, San Diego. I think all of it makes a lot of sense for the Pac-12.
And I think the Pac-12 confirmed that today by sending out that tweet that all 10 university presidents and chancellors were on board. That basically tells SMU and San Diego State, yes, we're united and we're moving forward on our grants of right deal. And wink, wink, that means you guys are going to get the votes to get on in, because we got the redheaded stepchild sitting in the corner and we're telling him what to do. Oh, ASU, what to do.
And hold on, let me pull up. Where is? Hold on, I gotta show you guys something absolutely amazing. You guys, I made it into a meme. Let me find it. Hold on one sec. This is a riot. Hold on, let me paste it real quick here. Sorry guys, I want to just put this in here, and I think you guys will absolutely laugh at this. All right, so someone has redone our Pac-12 statement. LBC, would you like to read it as we get it up here?
Okay, is that it right there?
Yeah, this is from John Grove. John Grove 02 on Twitter. It's pretty amazing.
Okay. Boy, the print is kind of small, but I'll give it a go here. We're entering. Oh gosh, that is small. Can you jump that up? Can you blow that up a little bit? We're entering the 5th month.
Not very easily.
Okay.
Tim, can you read it better?
He's on mute. Here, I'll give it a go.
Oh, Tim.
Yeah, no, I have a small screen. I have a small screen as well, because I'm on the Streamyard. I'm not on YouTube. I mean, if I could pop it on YouTube, maybe.
Oh, here we go. We're entering the 5th month of negotiations. I think I got it here. We're entering the 5th month of negotiations, and while we may not necessarily have a deal in place, conversations have been slightly above average with multiple media rights partners. The 10-member institutions are more than confident in our future growth and success off the field. Just look at how academically aligned we are. Tony Altimore has an entire presentation about it. Under no circumstances will one of our member institutions ever leave for that truck stop embedded conference in the middle of flyover country. We remain united in our commitment to one another on the research front, while being forced to add TV and streaming inventory for our partners by adding a Research 2 school in San Diego and a small private religious school who's likely the 7th best option for college football in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It may have taken us 9 drafts to craft this statement, but we are aligned in what we want and how and what we want to do this. There's no contract signed, and there doesn't need to be, because we are collegial.
Okay, this was kind of awesome. John Grove, whoever you are.
We don't sign
whoever you are, John Grove, this is amazing.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Klyovkov doesn't believe in signing contracts.
That was amazing, John. Oh. All right, guys. Well, we are over the time that we expected here for our quick game. I'm going to give a shout out to Greg Flugauer, who helped debunk a lot of these ASU leaks. You again, definitely check out his channel. Guys, any final thoughts here on Game of Thrones? Is Oski back in the Iron Throne along with Dubs and Tree? What's going on?
Well, we know it's not the Sun Devils. That's the one thing we can make sure for sure. Tony, did you get a hold of John's super chat? Did you ever get to do that one? You started?
Oh, we did start that one. Let me just pull that back up. Oh, you got. We're both clicking on it. Sorry. John, we've gone over this a lot of times. After San Diego State, why not Rice, Fresno State, Colorado? I mean, I don't think Colorado State or Utah State are in much of the conversation. They certainly don't move much of the needle. I agree on Rice and Fresno State for a couple of strategic reasons. I think that they just, they don't really add financial value, and I don't think they want to dilute the financial value anymore. What do you guys think?
I agree.
Right. I think the television partners, streaming partners are going to let the Pac-12 know what's a deal and what's not a deal, because now television dictates everything. They're the ones who are behind realignment. And so I think that San Diego State and SMU are in. I wouldn't be surprised if Kleofkoff has different proposals, but ultimately it's going to be the media partners who are going to dictate how many are going to join. But I think it's just going to be those two.
I think you've done a good job. They're not adding value, right? So those are great institutions. They're great programs.
Great institutions, all of them.
They are. And I'm not coming out from that angle. But what I'm saying is, are they going to add or dilute what the power movers in the conference? Are they going to add to Washington? Are they going to add to Oregon, slice of the pie, or are they going to pull it away? And if they're not going to, if they are, then at least they better come with some academics. And those are great universities, institutions. But I just don't think that they're what the Pac-12 is looking for.
And one last question. D-Rock Irish, friend of the show, wants to know, when's the latest for the decision? Like another year and a half?
Oof.
They've got over another year on it. So it's not urgent. Like that's the thing is they went to market early because of, everything going on. They didn't have to do that. I mean, the Big 12 went to market like 2.5 years early just to, cause all this. So I mean, again, it's not what you guys have to understand is like the fans are like, I want the answer. But like people in higher education, like this is not that fast. And the other, not that stuff doesn't move that fast. And the other piece is, remember when they fired the two guys over the overpayment scandal, those were the two guys that were the most important people in the negotiating team. So it honestly wouldn't surprise me if whoever is sort of replacing them on the negotiating team is doing a little bit of starting over from square one. That's kind of typically how negotiations like that go when you have to replace your team because you fired them in the overpayment scandal. All right. Any final thoughts here, guys?
Well, stay tuned. It seems like every week there's another drip of information. And Tony, you had your show last Monday and broke a lot of news on SMU and San Diego State. And here we have this Monday what happened with the leaked ASU booster email that Greg Flugar had a video on. So it's going to continue to move forward, but it looks like they've got at least two teams.
Yeah, make sure you guys are checking that. What's this channel's Around the Corner College Football? Is that what it is?
Yeah, peek around the corner.
Yeah, Chris sent me the link, and then I watched it all lunch today. Yeah, it's amazing. So if you guys haven't checked that out, make sure you go check it out. It's some great stuff over there.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We're glad to have you. We're sorry that Mark had some technical difficulties, and we hope we'll see all of you guys on the Voice of College Football USC channel for our weekly USC show with Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire, who, again, you should also be following. And we'll see you on Wednesday for the Pac-12 Chat Show Live. Everybody have a great night. Fight on. Go Aztecs, and I guess pony up. We'll see you soon.
Good night.